The scene opens on a cold, desolate landscape. The faint echoes of wind whistling through barren trees. A small, dimly lit house stands in the middle of an open field, its windows glowing faintly against the pitch-black night. Inside, we see a young boy hunched over a broken wooden table, his tiny hands gripping a pencil. The boy's face is stern, eyes wide with determination, despite the faint bruises on his arms. This boy is Gunther, though at this moment, he is merely Walter, a child trying to scribble his dreams onto a tattered notebook. Greatness isn't born in moments of glory, but in the shadows of struggle. And in this tiny Austrian village, a boy's dream was born amid whispers of doubt and echoes of resilience. The camera zooms in on the notebook, revealing a crudely drawn wrestling ring. The sound of a distant argument breaks the silence. His parents, stressed by financial burdens, are arguing in the other room. Walter looks toward the door, his jaw tightening. Before he was Gunther, the towering force of WWE, he was Walter, a boy who faced adversity at every corner. But this was only the beginning of a story that would shake the wrestling world to its core. The frame cuts to an intense montage, Walter being shoved to the ground by older kids at school, their taunts echoing cruelly, his mother handing him a pair of worn-out shoes, her eyes filled with apology. Late nights in a small barn, Walter's shadow boxing in the dark, his breath visible in the cold air. Suddenly, the screen flashes to the vibrant lights of a WWE ring, and a booming voice announces, "Gunther, the ring general." The stark contrast between his humble beginnings and his future success is striking. The narrative shifts back to young Walter, now older, standing in front of a mirror. His reflection shows a skinny teenager, yet his eyes reveal the burning intensity of a man far beyond his years. He whispers to himself one day, "They'll remember my name." As the introduction unfolds, we see glimpses of his childhood struggles, learning discipline from his father, who worked tirelessly in a factory. His first exposure to wrestling on a grainy black and white TV. His determination to rise above the life he was born into, despite everyone telling him otherwise. This is the story of a man who defied the odds, overcame his own demons, and redefined what it means to dominate. But the path to glory is never without shadows, and the truth behind Gunther's rise is far more shocking than anyone could have imagined. The camera pans out to show Walter running through the snow-covered woods, sweat pouring down his face. His breath fogs the air, but he doesn't stop. The screen fades to black, leaving the audience with one question: how far would you go to prove the world wrong? Walter's family lived in a small, tight-knit village where tradition and hard labor were the cornerstones of life. His father, a factory worker, believed in discipline above all else. Walter's mornings began before dawn, helping his father chop wood or fix equipment. His evenings were spent watching the village wrestlers practice at a local gym. Walter, barely 12, watches through the cracked gym window as grown men slam each other to the mat. His breath fogs the glass as his eyes widen with awe. He doesn't see the wrestling as mere entertainment. It's a form of survival, of dominance. The narrative deepens as we see Walter facing relentless bullying at school. Larger, meaner boys shove him into lockers, laughing at his lanky frame. Their taunts sting, but Walter never fights back. One day, a particularly cruel incident occurs. Walter is cornered by 3 bullies after class. They mock his dreams of wrestling, tearing pages from his notebook filled with sketches of wrestling moves and his future self as a champion. As they walk away laughing, Walter picks up the torn pages, his hands trembling with anger and shame. The camera lingers on his face as a single tear rolls down his cheek. He mutters under his breath, "One day, they'll regret this." Walter's first encounter with a mentor comes at the local wrestling gym. The gym owner, a retired wrestler named Klaus, notices Walter peeking in through the window every evening. One day, Klaus opens the door and calls out, "You'll never learn anything standing out there. Get in here." Walter hesitates but steps inside. Klaus tosses him an oversized pair of wrestling shoes and points to the mat. The gym becomes Walter's sanctuary, a place where he channels his frustration into raw power. Klaus sees potential in him and begins teaching him not just the moves but the philosophy of wrestling. Strength isn't just in your muscles, Walter, Klaus says during a training session, it's in your mind. Discipline will take you farther than anger ever could. A montage shows Walter's evolution, early struggles with basic wrestling moves, falling repeatedly but getting back up every time, late nights practicing alone in the barn, using hay bales as opponents, Klaus pushing him to his limits, yelling, "Again, faster, stronger." As the years pass, Walter begins to fill out, his once skinny frame transforming into a powerhouse of muscle and precision. He earns a reputation in local competitions, his name whispered with both respect and fear. But the praise comes with a price. Walter's growing confidence alienates him from his family, who view his obsession with wrestling as a distraction from real work. His father confronts him one evening. "Wrestling won't put food on the table. Walter, you're chasing a dream that will only break you." Walter's response is firm. "I'd rather break chasing my dream than live a life wondering, what if?" Walter's first major competition is a regional wrestling tournament. The odds are stacked against him. His opponent is a reigning champion known for his ruthless tactics. The match is brutal, every slam and hold echoing through the gymnasium. In a climactic moment, Walter counters a devastating move, pinning his opponent to the mat. The crowd erupts, but Walter remains stoic, his eyes scanning the room as if to prove a point to everyone who doubted him. The narration reflects on this pivotal moment. That night, Walter wasn't just a boy from a small village. He was a force to be reckoned with, a storm that no one saw coming. As Walter gains recognition, offers begin to pour in. He's invited to train in larger cities, leaving behind his village and the life he once knew. The camera lingers on a final scene of Walter packing his bag, his mother standing in the doorway with tears in her eyes. "Will you ever come back?" she asks softly. Walter pauses, looking at her with a mix of sadness and determination. "Not until they know my name." The scene ends with Walter boarding a train, the countryside fading into the distance as the narration crescendos. Walter was on his way to becoming Gunther. But the road ahead was fraught with challenges that would test not just his strength but his very soul. The camera opens to the bustling streets of a European city. The sights and sounds are overwhelming. Neon signs flicker, horns blare, and crowds bustle through the chaos. Among them is Walter, now in his late teens, carrying a worn-out duffel bag. His face is a mix of excitement and apprehension as he steps into the city's renowned wrestling academy, a far cry from the small-town gym he left behind. The narration begins. Walter left behind the familiarity of his village and stepped into a world that demanded more than just skill. It required resilience, sacrifice, and the willingness to face his darkest fears. Inside the academy, the environment is cutthroat. Wrestlers of all shapes and sizes spar relentlessly, each vying for the attention of the coaches. Walter is an outsider, a name no one recognizes. The first few weeks are grueling, scenes of struggle. Walter grapples with advanced techniques, often losing matches and earning the mocking laughter of seasoned wrestlers. Moments of doubt. Alone in his shared dorm room, Walter stares at the ceiling, his body battered and bruised. He whispers to himself, "Am I really meant for this?" Despite the setbacks, Walter's determination burns brighter. He spends hours studying his opponents, analyzing their strengths and weaknesses. Slowly, he begins to improve. Walter's first major rival emerges in Johann the Titan Richter, a towering wrestler known for his arrogance and brute force. Johann views Walter as an easy target, belittling him in front of the entire academy. "You don't belong here, farm boy." Johann sneers during a sparring session, slamming Walter to the mat. Their rivalry becomes the centerpiece of Walter's rise. A pivotal scene unfolds during a high-stakes tournament. Johann dominates the early rounds, his strength overpowering Walter. But Walter, fueled by his meticulous preparation and sheer willpower, turns the tide. The match ends with Walter executing a flawless submission hold, forcing Johann to tap out. The crowd erupts, and for the first time, Walter feels the recognition he has craved. The narration reflects, Walter wasn't just proving himself to others, he was proving himself to himself. As Walter's reputation grows, he catches the eye of international scouts. A representative from WWE approaches him after a match, offering him a chance to train at their performance center. The offer is both thrilling and daunting. Before leaving for the United States, Walter visits Klaus one last time. The old mentor, now frail, offers parting advice. "Remember, Walter, strength isn't just in your body, it's in your heart. Stay true to who you are." Walter nods, his eyes brimming with gratitude and determination. Arriving in the U.S., Walter enters a world unlike anything he's known. The WWE Performance Center is a high-pressure environment where only the strongest survive. The montage showcases his journey, grueling training sessions that push him to his physical and mental limits. Encounters with future legends of the wrestling world, some friendly, others openly hostile. Moments of self-doubt, where he questions whether he's made the right choice. One evening, Walter sits alone in the locker room, staring at his reflection. His inner monologue captures the weight of his journey. "They see me as just another rookie, another name to forget, but I'll show them. I'll show the world who I am." The turning point comes during a live event where Walter debuts under his new persona, GUNTHER, the Ring General. The name is a homage to his disciplined approach and unwavering focus. The crowd is unsure at first, but GUNTHER's commanding presence quickly wins them over. His debut match is a spectacle, a brutal contest against a seasoned wrestler who underestimates him. GUNTHER's precision and power leave the audience in awe. The match ends with GUNTHER standing tall, his hand raised in victory. Walter had transformed into GUNTHER, a force to be reckoned with. But the journey to the top would be anything but easy. Fame and controversy as GUNTHER rises through the WWE ranks. He faces the double-edged sword of fame, conflicts with management. GUNTHER's refusal to compromise his values leads to clashes with WWE executives, including Vince McMahon. Media scrutiny. Stories surface about GUNTHER's aggressive style, painting him as both a hero and a villain. Personal struggles. The constant pressure begins to take a toll, leading to moments of anger and self-isolation. In one emotional scene, GUNTHER vents to a close friend. "They don't see the sacrifices I've made. All they see is the mask I wear in the ring." The rising action builds to a climactic moment, GUNTHER's first championship match. The stakes are higher than ever, with his rival from the Performance Center, Johann, now a top contender. The match is brutal, every move a test of endurance and willpower. GUNTHER wins, but the victory is bittersweet. As he stands in the ring, championship belt in hand, the crowd chanting his name, his face betrays a hint of sadness. GUNTHER had achieved what many could only dream of, but at what cost? The weight of his journey was heavier than any championship belt. The scene opens in a dimly lit locker room, the air thick with tension. GUNTHER sits on a bench, his hands wrapped tightly in tape. staring at the floor. Outside, the roar of the crowd echoes through the arena, a constant reminder of the stage he's about to step onto. This isn't just any match. It's the culmination of years of struggle, sacrifice, and ambition. The narration begins. At the peak of his career, Gunther stood on the edge of greatness. But the closer he climbed to the top, the more the shadows of his past and the weight of his choices threatened to pull him down. The storyline comes full circle as Gunther is set to face Johann the Titan Richter once again, now one of WWE's biggest stars. Their feud has been building for months, fueled by personal jabs, backstage confrontations, and a media frenzy. Johann publicly mocks Gunther, calling him a disciplinarian with no heart. In a tense interview segment, Gunther finally fires back. Johann may be loud, but strength doesn't need a voice. It speaks for itself in the ring. The build-up to their match is electric, with fans and critics alike dubbing it the Battle of Titans. Backstage, Gunther's struggles reach a boiling point. He clashes with Vince McMahon over creative decisions, refusing to participate in a scripted storyline that compromises his values. His temper flares during training sessions, pushing away those closest to him. An emotional phone call with his mother reveals the growing distance between them. You've become everything you wanted, Walter, but are you still the boy I raised? These moments reveal a man torn between his public persona and his private turmoil. The climax centers on the highly anticipated match against Johann. The atmosphere is electric as the two wrestlers enter the ring, their intense stares locking across the canvas. The match unfolds with cinematic detail. Round 1. Johann dominates early, using his brute strength to overpower Gunther. The crowd chants Gunther's name, willing him to fight back. Round 2. Gunther begins to turn the tide, using his calculated precision and discipline to counter Johann's aggression. The ring becomes a battlefield, every move drawing gasps from the audience. Final round. Both men are battered and exhausted, their bodies pushed to the limit. In a breathtaking sequence, Gunther executes his signature move, the ring general's lock, forcing Johann to tap out. The crowd erupts as Gunther collapses to his knees, tears streaming down his face. He holds the championship belt aloft, but his expression is a mix of triumph and anguish. The narration reflects, Gunther had proven his strength to the world, but the victory felt hollow. In the pursuit of greatness, he had lost pieces of himself along the way. In the aftermath of the match, Gunther sits alone in the empty arena. The spotlight shines down on him, highlighting the sweat and blood on his face. His inner monologue reveals his deepest fears. They cheer for me now. But what happens when the lights go out? When the noise fades? Who am I without this ring? Flashbacks intercut the scene. Young Walter scribbling his dreams in a notebook. Klaus telling him, "Strength is in your heart." His mother's voice asking, "Will you ever come back?" These memories force Gunther to confront the choices he's made and the person he's become. The climax also features a pivotal confrontation between Gunther and Vince McMahon. Vince offers Gunther a lucrative contract extension, but with strings attached. He must adopt a gimmick that goes against his disciplined persona. Gunther refuses, his voice steady but firm. "I didn't fight my way to the top just to become a puppet. If I can't stay true to myself, then I don't belong here." Vince smirks, his tone icy. "You're walking away from everything you've built. Do you really think they'll remember you if you leave?" Gunther's response is quiet but resolute. "They'll remember me for standing for something, not just playing a role." In a twist that shocks the wrestling world, Gunther announces his temporary retirement during a live broadcast. The crowd falls silent as he addresses them. "This ring has given me everything I dreamed of and more, but it's time for me to step away and find the pieces of myself I've lost along the way." The narration crescendos. It was a decision few could understand. But for Gunther, it was the only path forward. A chance to rediscover the man behind the legend. The climax concludes with Gunther walking out of the arena, the cheers of the crowd fading behind him. The camera lingers on his silhouette as he steps into the night, leaving the audience with a sense of both closure and anticipation for what comes next. The scene opens to a tranquil Austrian countryside, far removed from the bright lights and roaring crowds of the WWE. Gunther, now simply Walter again, stands at the edge of a serene lake, his reflection rippling in the water. The narration sets the tone. After years in the spotlight, Walter returned to the quiet life he once knew. But the man who left was not the same as the man who returned. Walter moves back to his childhood home, greeted by familiar yet changed surroundings. His mother, older but still full of warmth, welcomes him with a mix of relief and apprehension. "I didn't think you'd come back," she says softly. "I needed to," Walter replies, his voice heavy with emotion. Through a series of quiet, reflective scenes, Walter begins to rebuild the connections he lost, helping his father with repairs around the house. Their relationship healing through unspoken gestures. Walking through the village, greeted by old neighbors who now see him not as the distant WWE star, but as the boy they once knew. Returning to Klaus's old gym, now run down, but filled with memories. Walter picks up a pair of wrestling shoes, smiling faintly as he recalls his beginnings. Despite the peaceful surroundings, Walter is haunted by memories of his time in WWE. Flashbacks, intense training sessions, high-stakes matches, and moments of anger and isolation. Nightmares. Walter wakes up in a cold sweat, reliving the relentless pressure and scrutiny he faced. In one emotional scene, Walter confides in his mother, "I thought I'd find peace by walking away, but it feels like I've left pieces of myself behind." "Maybe you haven't left them behind," she replies. "Maybe you're just learning how to carry them differently." Walter finds solace in helping the next generation of wrestlers. He begins coaching at a small local gym, passing on the lessons he learned to eager young athletes. Montage of training sessions. Walter teaching discipline, technique, and the importance of resilience. Moments of mentorship, encouraging a timid young wrestler to believe in themselves, echoing the advice Klaus once gave him. One student, a fiery and determined teenager named Lucas, reminds Walter of his younger self. In a heartwarming moment, Walter tells Lucas, "You have the strength to be great. Just remember, it's not about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right." As Walter finds stability, the consequences of his WWE career catch up with him. Health issues. Years of physical strain manifest in chronic pain, forcing Walter to confront his own mortality. Legal disputes. A lingering contract issue with WWE leads to a tense legal battle. Walter stands his ground, refusing to compromise his integrity. Media scrutiny. Interviews and documentaries attempt to paint conflicting narratives about his departure, but Walter remains silent, choosing dignity over drama. In a surprising turn, Johann the Titan Richter visits Walter at his gym. Their rivalry is long behind them, replaced by mutual respect. "You are always the better man," Johann admits, extending a hand. Walter hesitates, then shakes it with a faint smile. "And you are always the better showman." The two share a candid conversation about their careers, their regrets, and the pressures of fame. Johann's humility serves as a mirror for Walter, helping him find closure with his past. The falling action builds toward a quiet but powerful moment of triumph. Walter organizes a community wrestling event, bringing together aspiring wrestlers, fans, and local families. The event is not about fame or glory, but about unity and passion. In the final match of the evening, Lucas faces a tough opponent. Walter watches from the sidelines, his heart pounding as Lucas struggles. In a climactic moment, Lucas channels Walter's teachings, executing a flawless move to secure the win. The crowd erupts, and Walter smiles, his eyes glistening with pride. The narration reflects, Walter didn't need the spotlight to shine. His legacy lived on in the hearts of those he inspired. In a poignant scene, Walter sits at his desk, penning a letter to Vince McMahon and the WWE. The letter is not one of anger or regret, but of gratitude and honesty. Thank you for the platform, the lessons, and the challenges. I leave with no bitterness, only the hope that the next generation finds strength not just in their bodies, but in their souls. He folds a letter, places it in an envelope, and sets it aside, a symbolic act of closure. The chapter ends with Walter walking through the woods near his home, the golden light of sunset casting a warm glow. He pauses at the edge of a hill, looking out at the horizon. His voiceover captures his thoughts. I spent years chasing greatness, only to realize it was never about the destination. Greatness is in the journey, in the struggles, the lessons, and the people we touch along the way. The screen fades to black, leaving the audience with a sense of calm and fulfillment as Walter finds peace with himself and his journey. The scene begins in a serene Austrian village, the camera panning over rolling hills bathed in the soft light of dawn. Walter, now visibly older, is seen sitting on the front porch of his childhood home, sipping coffee from a ceramic mug. There's a calmness about him, a quiet strength that contrasts sharply with the towering, intense figure he once was in the WWE. The narration sets the tone. In the end, greatness isn't measured by the titles we hold or the accolades we earn. It's found in the lives we touch, the lessons we leave behind, and the peace we make with our own journey. Walter's life has taken on a new rhythm, one that is slower but no less meaningful. He spends his mornings working in the garden, reconnecting with the earth and finding solace in simplicity. Afternoons are spent at the local wrestling gym, mentoring young athletes and sharing his wisdom. Evenings are devoted to his family, including his aging parents, with whom he has rebuilt a strong bond. In one touching moment, Walter and his father sit by a crackling fire. His father, once skeptical of Walter's dreams, finally admits, I didn't understand your path, but I'm proud of the man you've become. Walter's response is simple but heartfelt. You taught me strength, even when I didn't realize it. Though Walter has stepped away from the ring, Gunther's impact continues to resonate. Fans, online forums and social media are filled with tributes to Gunther, celebrating his discipline, work ethic, and authenticity. Documentaries. A major streaming platform releases a documentary chronicling his journey, titled The Ring General, the story of Gunther. Walter watches it quietly with his family, a mix of pride and humility on his face. Wrestling culture. Walter's emphasis on discipline and respect influences a new generation of wrestlers, many of whom credit him as their inspiration. In a surprising turn, Walter is invited to a WWE Hall of Fame ceremony, where he is to be inducted as Gunther. The offer comes with a heartfelt letter from Vince McMahon, acknowledging Walter's contributions to the industry. You may have left the ring, but your legacy remains. It's time the world recognizes the man behind the Ring General. Initially hesitant, Walter ultimately accepts, seeing it as an opportunity for closure and celebration. The ceremony is a grand affair, attended by wrestling legends and fans from around the world. Walter walks onto the stage to thunderous applause, his presence commanding even in his simplicity. His speech is reflective and sincere. When I started this journey, I was a boy with a dream and a chip on my shoulder. Wrestling taught me discipline, resilience, and the importance of standing for something greater than yourself. I'm grateful for every moment, the victories, the losses, and the lessons in between. He pauses, looking directly at the crowd. But my greatest achievement isn't what I did in the ring. It's the lives I've touched and the values I've upheld. That is the legacy I'm most proud of. The crowd erupts into a standing ovation as Walter raises his hands. His face calm, yet deeply moved. Back in Austria, Walter writes in a journal, capturing his thoughts about his journey. I spent so much of my life proving others wrong. Now, I realize the real victory was proving myself right. Strength isn't in domination, it's in understanding, in compassion, in growth. The narration reflects Walter, the ring general, found his peace not in the roar of the crowd, but in the quiet moments where he could finally be himself. The resolution culminates in a final scene at the wrestling gym. Walter oversees a training session, his presence still commanding but now softer, more encouraging. Lucas, the young wrestler he mentored, prepares for his first major competition. Before Lucas leaves, Walter hands him an old, worn-out championship belt from his early days. This isn't just a symbol of victory, Walter says. It's a reminder of the discipline and heart it takes to get there. Carry it with pride. Lucas nods, his eyes shining with gratitude. As he walks out, Walter watches, a faint smile on his face. The final scene mirrors the opening of the story. Walter standing by the edge of the lake, the sun setting in the distance. The camera lingers on his face, capturing a man who has finally found peace. The narration concludes. In the end, Walter didn't just leave a legacy in the ring. He left a legacy in the hearts of those who believed in him. Inspired by his strength, his discipline, and his unwavering resolve, the ring general may have stepped away from the spotlight, but his spirit will forever shine. The screen fades to black, leaving the audience with a sense of closure and fulfillment. The story of Walter, Gunther, etched in their hearts. The screen fades into a quiet, sunlit morning in the Austrian countryside. Walter, now in his 50s, stands by the edge of the same lake that has become a symbolic reflection of his life. His frame is still strong, though softened by age, and his eyes hold a quiet wisdom. He picks up a smooth stone and skips it across the water. The narration begins. Time moves forward, but the echoes of a life lived with purpose linger forever. Walter, the ring general, found peace not in fame or glory, but in the enduring impact of his journey. Walter's life has settled into a fulfilling routine. Family. He has reconnected deeply with his family, spending time with his aging parents and now mentoring his nieces and nephews, some of whom have shown an interest in wrestling. Community. Walter has become a pillar of his community, organizing charity events and using his platform to support local causes. Writing. He begins penning a memoir, The Discipline of Strength, sharing the lessons he's learned throughout his career. One touching scene shows Walter reading a passage from his book to a group of young wrestlers. Strength isn't about overpowering others. It's about mastering yourself. Only then can you truly stand tall. The epilogue also reflects on Gunther's enduring legacy, wrestling history. His matches are still celebrated as some of the most technical and intense in WWE history. Fans revisit his iconic moments, discussing his influence on the sport. Influence on wrestlers. Wrestlers who trained under Walter share how his mentorship shaped their careers, crediting him for instilling discipline and respect for the craft. Cultural impact. Walter's name becomes synonymous with resilience and authenticity, with his story inspiring not just wrestlers, but people from all walks of life. One day, Walter receives a surprise visit from a familiar face, Johann the Titan Richter. Now retired, Johann has channeled his energy into philanthropy, supporting young athletes in underserved communities. The two share a candid conversation, reminiscing about their rivalries, their victories, and the challenges they faced. Johann reveals, "You were always my toughest opponent, Walter, but more than that, you were the one who pushed me to be better." Walter chuckles, replying, "We both needed each other more than we realized back then." The moment is a testament to their growth and the mutual respect they've developed over the years. The epilogue builds toward a symbolic passing of the torch. Lucas, Walter's star pupil, has become a rising star in the wrestling world, earning his first championship title. In a televised interview, Lucas credits Walter for his success. "Coach Walter taught me that strength comes from discipline and heart. Everything I've achieved, I owe to him." The scene shifts to Walter watching the interview from his living room. A proud smile spreads across his face as he leans back in his chair, his legacy alive in the new generation. The final moments of the epilogue focus on Walter's introspection. Sitting by the lake, he writes in his journal, his thoughts serving as a narration. "I chased greatness and found it, but not in the way I expected. It wasn't in the titles or the applause. It was in the lessons, the struggles, and the lives I touched. The ring general may be a chapter of my story, but it's the man behind the name who carries the legacy." He closes the journal and looks out at the water, the sunlight reflecting off its surface like 1,000 tiny stars. The epilogue ends with Walter standing at the edge of the lake, the camera slowly panning out. The narration concludes, "Walter's journey was one of strength, resilience, and discovery. His story may have ended in the ring, but his legacy will echo forever in the hearts of those who dared to dream." The screen fades to black as the sound of the lake's gentle waves lingers, leaving the audience with a sense of peace and inspiration.